Welcome to Back in the Groove, and if you're new here, my name's Keith and I'm getting back into vinyl after having my collection in storage for more than 25 years. Now, I was listening to some music the other day and a track came on that was actually a cover song which had previously been performed by another artist, and that got me thinking, what cover songs do I have in my collection, or what albums do I have in the collection that have cover songs on them? And maybe we know that they're a cover song. Maybe we'll get some surprises along the way. But I thought we'd have a little look and see what I've got in the collection. Now, one that we're possibly all familiar with is Since You've Been Gone, which appears on Rainbow's Down to Earth album. Since You've Been Gone is an absolute classic with Graham Bonnet belting it out on vocals, and such a really iconic tune that we all love. Now, that was written by Russ Ballard. Russ Ballard, I think, formerly of Argent, I think, has a good few solo albums out, sometimes under the moniker Russ Ballard, sometimes under Russ Ballard and the Barnet Dogs. But he has written some incredible songs, and there are so many covers in the collection. So we've got Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow. Now, Richie Blackmore must be a big Russ Ballard fan, because also on the Difficult to Cure album, they performed I Surrender, this time, of course, with Jolene Turner, but another absolute classic song written by Russ Ballard. Now, for Kiss fans, you might remember the solo albums that Kiss put out, where each member of the band released an album on a specific day, all recorded in and performed independently. This is the Ace Frehley album, and on this album there was something of a surprise hit in the form of New York Groove, which was also written by Russ Ballard, and it's an absolute classic song as well. Now, in a similar theme, Russ Ballard also wrote Winning on the Santana album Z-Bop, but not to be outdone by Santana, Wildlife, which is Steve and Chris Overland's band before forming FM, also performed the track Winning as well. Now, getting back to Ace Frehley, he released the album Frehley's Comet, and on this he performs the Russ Ballard track Into the Night, which is a decent song, but not in the realms of I Surrender, Since You've Been Gone, etc. But on Uriah Heep's Abominog album, there's another Russ Ballard track on there called On the Rebound, and I hadn't realized that Russ Ballard had written On the Rebound, and it's an absolutely fantastic song with Pete Golby on vocals. And in fact, the Abominog album is amazing. I'd always thought Pete Golby had written the song, if I'm honest, but turns out it was a Russ Ballard track. Now, Russ Ballard, as I said, was in Argent, and while in Argent, he wrote the song God Gave Rock and Roll to us, and that was performed by Petra. This is Petra's Captured in Time and Space, a live album of theirs, where they do God Gave Rock and Roll, as they write it on here. Now, you might know the track better as performed by Kiss. They had the track out on their Revenge album, I think. Don't happen to have that on vinyl, but the Kiss's version is an absolute fantastic version of the song. So there's Russ Ballard, and you know, he, as you can see, has been covered fairly well by a number of people, but also we've got uh, a good representation of sort of funk, soul, old school rock and roll, Beatles, all sorts of stuff in here. So we'll continue on through the collection and see what else we come across. Here we've got Mama's Boys with Growing Up the Hard Way, and they do a fantastic cover of the Stevie Wonder track called Higher Ground. Keith Murrell's vocals, and you have to forgive me if I keep talking about vocalists when I talk about these bands. Um, One of the things I love most about music is often vocalists. Always, I love everything, guitarists, keyboard players, etc. But there's something about vocalists that are always at the heart of a good band and a good track for me. Now, another Stevie Wonder song appears on Gillan's Magic, and that is It Living for the City. And this is a great version that Ian Gillan knocks out. I don't think he does such a good job on New Orleans from Future Shock, which is a cover of a Wilson Pickett track. But Gillan is obviously fond of a cover song here and there. Blackfoot are another band that have done a few covers. On this particular album, they do two covers. They do Living in the Limelight, which is a cover of a Peter Cetera song. Peter Cetera, formerly of Chicago, I think. And they also do a track called Morning Dew, which was done by Bonnie Dobson, who I didn't know before kind of looking this up. But Bonnie Dobson's version it's originally quite a sort of folky song, female vocals, and a very laid back folk song, but really interesting. And to be honest, it's really interesting to be going through these albums, these tracks, and comparing to original versions. It just really opens you up to a lot of other stuff, and it's really interesting to see where a lot of this stuff originates. This Glenn Hughes album, this is Building the Machine, and on here he does a track called I Just Want to Celebrate, which was originally done by an American band called Rare Earth, and I actually prefer Rare Earth's, not easy for me to say, Rare Earth's version of that particular track. House of Lords do a cover of Can't Find My Way Home, which is originally written by Steve Winwood, originally performed by Blind Faith on the Blind Faith album, debut album, which came out in, I think, 1969, just checking my notes. Blind Faith, I think, consisted of Ginger Baker, was it? Steve Winwood, Eric Clapton. Can't think who else was in there, but absolute classic band, of course. Sammy Hagar has been known to put some cover songs out there. On this one, he does Catch the Wind by Donovan. And he's obviously a bit of a Donovan fan because he also does Young Girl Blues. Now, Young Girl Blues is one of my favourite Sammy Hagar songs that he performs. I think there's a great version on here, but there's also a fantastic live version on this Loud and Clear album as well. Now, you might also be familiar with Heart and their track Alone. But did you know that that was a cover song? That was originally done by a melodic rock band called I-10. So a little bit unusual in that it didn't originate with some old rock and roll songs, some old blues, whatever. It was a fairly modern song, and very quick for them to put that out as a cover. We talked about Wildlife earlier, and the Overland Brothers, and of course they went on to form FM. And on this Aphrodisiac album, they put a song out called Ain't Too Proud, which was done originally by the Temptations. And there's an awful lot of these songs on here that are done originally by bands, soul bands like the Temptations. We'll see plenty more of that kind of thing coming up. Here we've got an album by The Firm, and they do You've Lost That Loving Feeling, which was originally by the Righteous Brothers, of course. Dave Lee Roth has been known to put a few covers out as well. This is Eat 'em and Smile, and on this he actually does two covers. First of all, there's a cover of Shy Boy, which you could argue is a cover or not, but Shy Boy was written by Billy Sheehan, who obviously is the bassist in the Dave Lee Roth band, but was originally written for the band Tallers. And on here, we've also got Tobacco Road, which was written by Lou Rawls, who I'd never heard of, I'll be honest. I have heard other versions of Tobacco Road by, I think, Jefferson Airplane, and Spooky Tooth did a version of it as well. But check out Lou Rawls' version. Lou Rawls seems to be a blues guitarist going back to, I would say, the 50s, 60s, and it's a fantastic version by Lou Rawls, the original. Now, Dave Lee Roth also on the Crazy from the Heat EP, which is just 4 tracks, actually does 2 covers on this. The first one being California Girls by the Beach Boys, which I think we all know very well as the original. But the one that all I knew was a cover. I had no idea who had actually performed, and that was Just a Gigolo. It's actually a kind of a medley of Just a Gigolo and I Ain't Got Nobody. And that was originally done by Sam Butera and the Witnesses, who I'd never ever heard of, but enjoyed checking that out. And it was a great version of that. Bruce Dickinson on his Tattooed Millionaire album did a cover of All the Young Dudes by Mott the Hoople, which I'm sure many of us will be familiar with. The band Devo put a really radical version of the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction, brackets, I Can't Get No. This was a really cool, quirky, new wave version of the song, and something that really got me into Devo at the time. Now, a bit of a crooner, or we would think of him as a bit of a crooner these days, I think, is Michael Bolton. Now, on the album Soul Provider, he does the track Georgia on My Mind, which has been covered many, many times. Originally written in about 1930, and apparently it's most associated with Ray Charles doing that particular track. Now, back to Ace Frehley, who we've seen do several covers already on this album, Trouble Walking, has a bit of a change from Russ Ballard, but goes for another well-known British songwriter in the form of Jeff Lynne. And he does a track on here called Do You, which was originally performed by the Electric Light Orchestra, or ELO as we know them as. Of course, we all probably know Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous album, and of course Rosalie, which is performed on here, is actually a track by the Bob Seger Band, not a an original Thin Lizzy track. On Dennis DeYoung's solo album Desert Moon, he does a cracking version of Fire, which was originally a Jimi Hendrix song. First time I'd heard the song, actually, so I heard that before the Jimi Hendrix version. Thunder have put Give Me Some Lovin' on this particular album, which was originally done by the Spencer Davis Group, I believe, also being done by Humble Pie, Traffic, etc. Traffic makes sense because I think Steve Winwood was in the Spencer Davis Group, I think. Next up, we've got Bullet Boys, and they do the track For the Love of the Money, which was originally done by the OJs. And that's a great song. And I always remember the track on the Bullet Boys album as being a standout track on the album. But it turns out that Utopia also covered the same song on their Swing to the Right album. Now, Phil Collins is up next, and he does a great cover of Diana Ross and the Supremes as You Can't Hurry Love. You might recall, if you're in the UK, I think it was a relative hit in the UK. And for me, at the time that it came out, it was quite interesting to see rock artists doing, remakes of such overtly soul songs. So yeah, quite a new thing at the time for me, at least. Next up, we've got Todd Rundgren, and he is doing a track called Mighty Love by the Spinners. And on the Tortured Artist effect, he also does upside down Tinder Soldier, which is by the Small Faces, and that was written originally by Steve Marriott and Ronnie Lane, and that's a great song. Tin Soldier has been covered many times, I think. Now, one of my favorite covers of all time. Now, I was actually in a restaurant about two weeks ago, and was really shocked to hear this come on. And it was actually this version that came on, and it was April Wine's 21st Century Schizoid Man, which is on the Harder Faster album, which was originally done, of course, by King Crimson, and I think again has been covered many times. But this, I think, is an absolute standout version of the song itself. Now, the Beatles have been covered, or at least Lennon and McCartney, and their writing has been covered several times. And Lone Star put out the track She Said, She Said on their debut album, which is a really good song. Now, staying with the Beatles, Peter Criss did a cover of Jealous Guy, and I've got to be honest, I hate the song. I don't know what it is about that track. There's a lot of John Lennon stuff that I have to be honest, I just don't like a lot. And Jealous Guy is is one of those. Up next, another Beatles related song is by Japanese band Wow Wow, and they do a cover of Helter Skelter on here, which is actually a really good version. Interestingly, as a Japanese band, they do have Neil Murray standing in on bass, and I think he did a couple of albums with them. Neil Murray, of course, of kind of Whitesnake fame. Now, I mentioned this album a couple of weeks ago, and a great version of Procol Harum's A Whiter Shade of Pale. This is Sammy Hagar with Neil Sean, Kenny Aronson, and I can't remember the other guy's name. I think I had the same problem when I did the video last time. But Doro Pesh also did a cover of Whiter Shade of Pale as well. Now, unfortunately, I don't have it on vinyl, but one of my favourite versions of Whiter Shade of Pale was Glenn Hughes doing a version with, I think, Mark Bonilla. And that was an absolute classic version of Whiter Shade of Pale, if you can find a copy of that. Now, next up, we've got Alice Cooper. Now, this is a bit of an unusual one because he does the track I'm Always Chasing Rainbows, which is an old vaudeville song from like the early 20s, 30s, something like that. And the sort of earliest well-known version, I think, was Judy Garland's version from about 1941, and she did it in a film called Ziegfeld Girl, which I've never heard of, never seen the film, don't know what her version's like, but quite an interesting cover. Um, I was shocked to find that on Billion Dollar Babies, Hello Hooray, the opening track, is actually a cover as well. And that's a cover of Judy Collins. It was originally written by Rolf Kempf. But if you listen to the original, it's a real soft and gentle folk song. So, what Alice Cooper, Bob Ezrin, whoever's responsible for what that becomes on here is such a contrast and a real different version, and really interesting what they did with that. Next up, we got Poison, Your Mama Don't Know, which was originally done by Kenny Loggins and Jim Messina, and was interestingly was also covered by Y&T, but I don't have that on vinyl. Santana, many years ago, I remember being at school and hearing the track "She's Not There," which I absolutely loved by Santana. But it turned out that that was a cover, I think, done by the Zombies. But that's an absolutely fantastic cover. And speaking of fantastic covers, we've got the Powerhouse, which Power Station, sorry, which was a supergroup in effect, consisting of Robert Palmer and Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, and John Taylor as well, also from Duran Duran, and Tony Thompson, I think. And they do an absolutely stonking version of Get It On by Mark Bolan and T Rex. It's an absolutely fantastic version. If you get a chance to listen to that, do go and give yourself a treat. Next up, we've got Peter Criss. We've had Peter Criss earlier doing some John Lennon stuff. We've seen Ace Frehley doing some covers. This one is a bit more unusual. He does the track You Better Run, which was originally done by a New Jersey outfit called the Rascals, which I don't know very much about. We've then got Ted Nugent, who you may be aware of the track Baby Please Don't Go, which was a very old song by Big Joe Williams, who was a Delta blues guitarist. So I'm not sure how far this dates back to, but probably 50s to 60s kind of stuff, but a real fun track. And in a similar vein, I'd say Pat Travis's Boom Boom Out Go the Lights is a similar classic. Now, this was originally written by Stan Lewis. Now, Stan Lewis turns out was a record store, record label owner, as it happens. Not sure. I assume he was writing these songs for artists for his own label. As far as I'm aware, He wasn't in any particular band or whatever. He seemed to be a distributor of other labels, records. He was a distributor for, I think, Atlantic and Chess and a few other people. But Pat Travers seems to have made the track his own effectively, and has recorded it many times, and it's become an absolute classic of his. Now, one thing we might not think of as being a cover song is Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Jerusalem, which is their arrangement of the famous poem Jerusalem. I think was it written by William Blake, I think, the original poem, and I think that was put to music, you know, as a hymn, long before Emerson, Lake and Palmer got their hands on it. Now, one of my favourite bands is the Tubes, and on Outside Inside, the Tubes did a fantastic track with another favourite of mine, Martha Davis of the Motels, and they did a track called Monkey Time. And it turns out that Monkey Time was originally written by Curtis Mayfield, and it was originally performed by the Miracles, or what we might know of as Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Now, in a similar vein to that kind of style or that kind of cover, we get Love Potion Number 9, which was originally done by the Clovers and then again done by the Searchers, but it's an absolute belter of a cover version that Tigers of Pangtang do. An absolute standout cover that would possibly be right up there in my top 20 covers. Now, this would be pretty high on my list as well. This is Wasps Inside the Electric Circus. And on this particular album, they do a great rendition of I Don't Need No Doctor. Now, I Don't Need No Doctor, I think was that a Humble Pie track? I think it was Humble Pie. But again, an absolutely stellar version that again is really high on my list. Megadeth, another band that have been known to do the odd cover. This is a Willie Dixon song called I Ain't Superstitious. So it's quite interesting to hear this style in Megadeth's music, this sort of old school rock and roll underlying tone. Now, Megadeth also put out one of the Sex Pistols one, Anarchy in the UK. That's it. And now I don't happen to have that on vinyl, but it just shows that Dave Mustaine, does like the odd cover. Now, I talked about the Motels and Martha Davis earlier when talking about the Tubes and doing Monkey Time. In this case, they do a track called He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss, which was originally done by the Crystals and was apparently originally written by Carole King. And I do go on about the Motels a little bit here and there. It's a little bit of a odd choice for me when you see so much of the hard rock and heavy metal, etc., that you see in the collection. But the Motels, there's just something about them that I really do love. Now, another classic of a cover, of course, is Van Halen's "You Really Got Me," which is a great cover of the Kinks classic written by Ray Davies, that was just a standout stellar cover track from the debut album. But they also put out another cover song on their second album, which is You're No Good, which was originally done by Dee Dee Warwick in as early as 1963. and I think was later done by Linda Ronstadt as well. But was surprised that that was a cover, actually. Next up, talking about covers, we've got Judas Priest doing one with Better By You, Better Than Me, which was originally a Spooky Tooth song. And they weren't averse to doing covers either, because on the Unleashed in the East live album, they do not one, but two covers. We've got, first of all, The Green Manalishi, which is an old Fleetwood Mac song originally written by Peter Green of Fleetwood Mac. And then, of course, they do Diamonds and Rust, which is an old Joan Baez kind of folky song. And then we've got the mighty Led Zeppelin. This is Led Zeppelin 1. And they do not one, but two covers, in effect, with You Shook Me and I Can't Quit You, Babe. And interestingly, those are both Willie Dixon covers. So two covers covering the same artist. They just seem to be massive Willie Dixon fans. And then that continues on to the second album with more Willie Dixon, with Bring It On Home. Although I think the way that they arrange Bring It On Home, the start of the song is Willie Dixon, and then they kind of break into their own composition, and also Whole Lotta Love is very similar. So that is about it for the selections I've got. I'm not sure what you made of that. I found it really interesting going through the collection, discovering these cover tracks, going back to the original artists, listening to their versions, listening to the differences, and it gave me a whole kind of new appreciation for the tracks themselves. And I really love understanding where they originate, how they've grown and developed as they're being covered. Maybe not only by the bands that we've seen here, but many of these have been covered by multiple artists as well. And it's always interesting to see one artist's take on another artist's song. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up, and I would really appreciate it if you're not already a subscriber. If this video is the one that earned your subscription, that would be fantastic. But until the next video, bye for now.